All right, so hello, Steven. How are you today?
Wonderful, thank you, Alex. How are you?
I'm great. Merry Christmas, Happy New Year, and
Christmas, Happy New
thank
Year.
you very much for your agreeing to give us another interview. But as usual, it's a Christmas music quiz. Please listen to music. All right, so what was it?
I would say those are the Eagles.
Good. You get a point. Nice. I
Two for two.
hope you in a better mood, in a higher mood now because it's still very early. So what's the time is there in Mexico?
Oh, it's not too early. It's 6:26 a.m.
Nice. So everything is great. You are in a great mood. We have minus 15 degrees below zero. It's so great Christmas weather. How does Mother Nature behave in Mexico? What's the weather like there?
Well, in my area where I'm currently, it's maybe plus 15, maybe plus 20 even in the sun.
Okay.
But
Good.
in the northern state, it's probably minus 15 as well in the more desert regions here in Mexico. So a large spectrum of temperatures.
So nature influences our life, and people influence nature. And it's not always a win-win situation, win-win influence. Let's talk about today about the most important aspect of our life, nature. We will have come from nature and we will disappear or dissolve in nature one day like sugar in water, unfortunately. So the first question, what things do you think about when you hear the word nature?
Oh, well, when I think nature, I think more of the beauty of nature than anything else. You're talking more of the impact, the effect of nature. I think of the beauty of nature. And whether it's here in Mexico, United States, or Russia, even Alex, you riding the bike through nature in the area of Pushkino,
Right.
how beautiful nature is.
Right.
Does not matter the season your recent travels through the winter trails near your house were
Right.
simply beautiful.
Yes.
I could even
Thank
smell
you.
the fresh, crisp air
Thank
of the
you, Steven.
winter.
Great.
Thank you.
Good. Where is the nature at its most beautiful form? In the mountains, oceans, deserts, beaches, space, or forests? Okay, why do you think so?
I think it belongs in the view of the viewer.
Right, right.
I love the mountains.
Mm.
Other people love
Ooh.
the desert. Some
Ooh.
people need to be near the ocean.
Okay,
So I think it depends on who is actually looking at nature and their interpretation, their own feelings. Like art, nature is art and art is nature. So I think it depends on the individual.
beautiful, beautiful answer, but why mountains? Tell us
I
more.
don't know. Something majestic about the mountains. Something seeing the history of this planet through the development of the mountains. Maybe something so far in the distance, and yet it still is touchable, so to speak. You can actually get to them and appreciate their beauty.
All right, so how much nature is there where you live? You live in the north of the States and you live in the center of Mexico. So tell us about these two places.
Right. Unfortunately, in my point of view, where I live is in the heart of a big city, so I don't see much of nature per se, but we're not far from what's called the Sierra Gordas, excuse me, and that is one of the more beauty-filled nature areas of Mexico, and many tourists, not just locals, but tourists come down to hike through the mountains and through the rivers of this area, very beautiful area. Come on down, Alex, I invite you.
Okay, good. And the United States, how is there?
That's difficult. Like Russia, the United States is a very big country. So whether you're talking mountains, whether you're talking rivers, deserts, it has it all. The cold, the warmth, and beautiful through and through. I encourage people to travel and soak in nature within their respective countries or traveling abroad. Mm-hmm.
Well, if we talk about your place of birth, about your native town in the United States.
Okay, I'm
What's
from
it
a
like?
town in the state of Wisconsin, in the northern part, central northern part of the United States, right on one of the Great Lakes, as they call it, Lake Michigan.
Okay.
So everywhere to the east of our city was only water. It's a large, large body of water. That would be the highlight, the high point of nature in my area, for my hometown. Mm-hmm.
Okay, so you told me some days that when you are in the States in quite a cold weather, you are missing for Mexico, and vice versa. So is it so when you are in a hot climate, you miss for snow, for example?
Oh, of course. I think it's like anybody, if you're spend too much time in one climate, you start missing the other. Oh, it's so dry, I wish it would rain. Oh, it's so hot, I wish it would snow, or somewhere in between. Maybe not the extremes, but usually people, I think in general, miss what they don't have, and maybe in that case don't appreciate what they do have. Mm-hmm.
Okay, what does the power of nature mean? How powerful is nature?
See, now when you talk power of nature, then I start thinking more of its forceful side, the natural events of nature that can do damage, whether it's to nature itself or to human infrastructure. When you talk the hurricanes, the tornadoes, the earthquakes, the tsunamis, etc. I think of power, I think of force, and nature reminds us as human beings every once in a while how powerful it is, and that human beings really don't have much as power is concerned against nature. We're pretty much in a lose situation there.
Okay, thank you. Interesting. Where is the best place in your country to see or to experience nature, or in Mexico, from your experience, where you were? Yes,
that's a good one. From my experience, because I have traveled my country, United States, throughout, I have a passion for what's called the Northwest, or the Pacific Northwest, the states of Oregon and Washington. And not to surprise our listeners, they are filled with the mountains, forests, mountains, rivers, but I emphasize the mountains.
Mm-hmm. And Mexico?
No, in the United States.
Yes, in the United States. But
in Mexico, probably the southern states, and very nature-filled, not much development there as far as human development, not many big cities in the southern part of the country, so lush with forests and beautiful views to hike through and to see from the distance. Mm-hmm.
Okay, so we are friends on Facebook, and when I look at your page, I always see lots of pictures of nature. And I love this picture. So why do you put all this stuff on the page?
Oh, it's a passion more than anything else. I think people should see nature. It appeals to me. I refer nature to art and art to nature, and maybe I'm re-displaying the art of nature to others around the world, my friends on Facebook and beyond. Mm-hmm.
Okay, so you are getting a master's degree at university, and you know the system of education of the United States. How much is it important to teach, to be careful for nature from the university curriculum or from the school curriculum in the United States? Do you teach how to behave with nature?
Well, I think, okay, I need to separate that because
Yes.
I think that it might depend on the degree you're seeking.
Okay.
With me, it's in geography, and
Okay.
geography goes hand in hand with environmental resources,
Okay.
environmental sciences.
Good.
So for me, it goes hand in hand. It's a part of what I'm studying. So in turn, yes, I would emphasize and teach the importance of nature, keeping nature clean, the recycling of nature, so to speak. And I would put this emphasis not only at the collegiate level, but any level, even before kindergarten. I think parents should teach their children the importance of nature and how to appreciate it. Mm-hmm.
Okay, so still I think you are a kind of expert in this field, and so usually we do predictions at the beginning of the year. But I would ask you to predict in a further time, in a long time, in 15 years from now, how different do you think the nature would be like? Your prediction?
Ooh, that's a tough one, Alex.
Yes.
You're hitting
Yes.
a time frame that's interesting because I think man's or human beings' impact on nature is going to get a little bit worse before it improves. I think in the education systems throughout the world, we're improving our relationship with nature. But before that happens, and before that generation becomes adults and can have a positive impact on nature, I think it's still going to be on the decline in the near future. But 15 years from now, that next generation will appreciate nature more, and we'll start improving our relationship at that point. So.
Okay, great. That's great. You give us an optimistic prediction. So let's go to the last part of our interview. We usually listen to a part from the novel by Bulgakov, The Master and Margarita, and no exceptions this time. But to connect our previous topic, I would say that there is a very important definition of the word nature. It's a nature of a human being. What is inside of his or her soul and heart. It could be mean or generous or envious. Let's listen to the part from the novel where a bartender from buffet in a variety show goes to the devil. He goes to the devil because the devil and his entourage, his assistants, went to the variety show in Moscow to look at people, what kind of nature of these Muscovites is. So they went to the variety show, and devil's assistants gave a lot of tricks. For example, from the ceiling of the variety show fell a lot of banknotes, and people took them, but later these banknotes turned into pieces of paper, and he invited all women in the variety show to change their old clothes into new ones. And after the show was finished, some of the women were practically naked in the streets, wearing only underwear. So such kind of tricks. And this man from a buffet, he was so disappointed because some people paid, for example, for sandwiches, these fake banknotes, which turned into pieces of paper, and he went to devil to ask him turn these pieces of paper back into a banknote. So let's listen to this part of this story. Thank you, Stephen, and
thank you.
Good.
When he entered the room he had been invited into, the bartender was so struck by the furnishings that he forgot why he had come. Streaming through the large stained glass windows, the whim of the jeweler's wife who had vanished without a trace, was an extraordinary light, similar to the light in a church. Wood was burning in the huge old-fashioned fireplace despite the hot spring day. Yet it was not the least bit hot in the room. In fact, quite the opposite. A cellar-like dampness enveloped the man entering the room. Sitting on a tiger skin in front of the fireplace was a huge black cat, squinting contentedly at the fire. There was a table that made the God-fearing bartender shudder when he saw it. The table was covered with a brocaded altar cloth. On the altar cloth, numerous bottles were arranged, pot-bellied, dusty, and moldy. Amidst the bottles, a plate gleamed, and it was immediately obvious that the plate was made of pure gold. By the fireplace, a short, red-headed man with a knife in his belt was roasting pieces of meat skewered on a long steel sword, and the juice from the meat dripped in the fire, and the smoke went up the chimney. It smelled not only of roast meat, but of very strong perfume and incense, which made the bartender, who had learned of Berlioz's death and his place of residence from the newspapers, wonder if they weren't performing some kind of requiem mass for him. However, that notion was so preposterous that he dismissed it out of hand. The stunned bartender suddenly heard a deep bass say, "Well, sir, how can I help you?" There, in the shadows, was the one whom the bartender needed to see. The black magician lay sprawled on an immense couch that was low to the floor and strewn with pillows. It seemed to the bartender that the artiste was wearing nothing but black underwear and black pointed slippers. The bartender began bitterly, am the chief bartender and buffet manager of the Variety Theatre. The artiste stretched out a hand sparkling with precious stones as if to seal the bartender's lips, and began speaking heatedly. No, not another word. Not in any circumstances, never. I wouldn't put a thing from that buffet of yours into my mouth. I, most venerable sir, passed your counter yesterday, and I still can't forget the sturgeon and the brinza cheese. My good man, brinza isn't supposed to be green. Someone must have deceived you. It's supposed to be white. And that tea, it's dishwater. With my own eyes, I saw some sloppy girl pour unboiled water out of a pail into your huge samovar, yet they continued pouring tea from it anyway. No, my dear fellow, that's not the way to do things. Excuse me, began Andrei Fokich, stunned by this sudden attack. But I didn't come about that. The sturgeon's not the issue. How can it not be the issue if it's spoiled? They sent a sturgeon that's second grade fresh, said the bartender. Dear fellow, that's absurd. What's absurd? Second grade fresh, that's absurd. Freshness comes in only one grade, first grade, and that's it. And if the sturgeon's second grade fresh, that means it's rotten. Excuse me, the bartender said once again, not knowing how to escape the artiste's tongue-lashing. I cannot excuse you, the latter said firmly. But I didn't come about that, said the bartender, now completely at a loss. You didn't? The foreign magician asked in amazement. What was it then that brought you here? If my memory doesn't deceive me, I've known only one other person in your line of work, and that was a lady settler. But that was long before you were even born. However, I'm glad you've come. Azazello, a stool for the bar manager. The one roasting the meat turned around, terrifying the bartender with his fang, and deftly handed him one of the low, dark oak stools. There was nothing else in the room to sit on. "Thank you very much," said the bartender, lowering himself onto the stool, the back leg of which then caved in with a crash. The bartender let out a groan and hit his rump painfully against the floor. As he fell, his leg upset another stool nearby, spilling a full glass of red wine all over his trousers. The artiste exclaimed, "Oops! Did you hurt yourself?" Azazello helped the bartender get up and offered him another seat. In a grief-stricken voice, the bartender refused his host's suggestion that he remove his trousers and dry them in front of the fire. Feeling extremely uncomfortable in his wet underwear and clothes, he sat down gingerly on the other stool. "I love sitting low to the ground," said the artiste, "because then falling off isn't so dangerous. Now then, we were talking about the sturgeon, were we not? My dear fellow, freshness, freshness, and more freshness. That should be every buffet manager's motto. Yes, well, wouldn't you like to have a taste?" Here, in the crimson glow of the fireplace, a sword flashed in front of the bartender, and Azazello put a sizzling piece of meat on a gold platter. He sprinkled it with lemon juice and handed the bartender a two-pronged gold fork. "Thank you very much, but No, try it." Out of politeness, the bartender put a piece in his mouth and realized immediately that he was eating something that was truly very fresh and, what's more, unusually tasty. But even so, as the bartender chewed the fragrant, succulent meat, he almost choked and fell a second time. A large, dark bird flew in from the adjoining room, softly brushing its wing against the bartender's bald head. Alighting on the mantelpiece, next to the clock, it turned out to be an owl. "Oh, my God," thought Andrei Fokich, who, like all bartenders, was nervous and edgy. "This is some apartment. A glass of wine? White? Red? Which imported wine do you prefer at this hour?" "Thank you, but I don't drink." "How unfortunate. How about a game of dice? Or do you like some other games? Dominoes? Cards?" "I don't play," replied the already weary bartender. "That's the limit," concluded the host. "There is, if